Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Happy Friday, happy Memorial Day weekend for those of you for my fellow Americans, I suppose I should say, those of you in the United States. It's Memorial Day weekend. It is uh the end of the school year for at least one special person watching. And I see Dana's in the live chat. With, you have congratulations, you have made it through another school year. Your grading is all done. You're pretty much all wrapped up for the year, I think. So I will toast to you with a can of my flavored seltzer with you, which you detest so much. But I mean it. Oh, I mean it with all the love in the world. So anyway, thanks everybody for watching. And thanks everybody for joining me. As usual, I will be answering questions that were pre-submitted from my Patreon patrons and also my channel members, because now that I have channel memberships open, all you channel members get to pre-submit questions as well. Members and patrons alike both get a link to the Google Doc from which I take my pre-submitted questions. So I'll get to those in a second. But first, I wanted to show you all something. This is pretty neat. I got a new bit of wall decoration this week. So some of you may know, you may have seen it in the background of some of my videos that I shoot in my living room. I have a big print on the wall above one of my couches of it's a print of the cover of Batman #1 from 1940. And I thought it would be neat to get like something else to hang on the wall there, because there's a lot of open space on the wall. So so next to the Batman #1 print, I got another print that just got here this week to hang on it, to hang on the wall next to it. And it's this right here. It is Nightwing #1. So there's Batman #1 on the left, and then there's Nightwing #1 on the right. Number of the Nightwing monthly ongoing series, of course, not the Nightwing miniseries, which I believe was the first Nightwing #1, but that was the miniseries, not the ongoing series. So this is the #1 of the Nightwing ongoing series, with art by Scott McDaniel on the cover there. It's a really nice cover. It's a really cool drawing of Nightwing, and there you go. And that is the home decor version of taking a fedora selfie, I believe. Uh, so, um, but anyway, so I hope I'm really pleased with it. I think it looks really cool, and I am happy to share it with you. So now let us begin the proceedings. Let's start with the reason that we're all here, which is, of course, thank you, Dana. Dana knows me. Dana's got it all figured out. Let's begin with the first of my patron slash member questions. And the first one comes from Russell, who says, I have a Star Trek question, of course. TOS episode titled A Taste of Armageddon. How is it the Enterprise can have a General Order 24? The Enterprise is supposed to be an exploration ship whose directive is to seek out new life. Anyways, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you. Well, for those of you who don't know, General Order 24, as depicted in the episode A Taste of Armageddon, is an order that, when given by the captain, results in the starship destroying all of the cities on a planet. Basically, it's basically a genocide order. There's an order in Starfleet regulations that allows the captain of a starship to order his crew to use the weapons in their starship to like wipe out an entire planet. And it's a great question, as why would such an order exist if the mission of the ship is fundamentally peaceful and scientific and one of exploration? Why would there be a regulation that allows them to legally destroy an entire planet? Now, the reason that it exists within the structure of the story is that Kirk gives the order to Scotty while he is on a landing party and he's being held hostage on a planet. And he gets a momentary bit of communication with Scotty, who is in orbit in command of the Enterprise. And he tells him, if you don't hear from me by such and such a time, then execute Order 24. So it establishes a ticking clock in the episode. So that's the purpose it serves narratively. But it does kind of contradict everything that Starfleet is supposed to stand for. And I think it is sort of it's a result of the fact that it was early in the series. I think Taste of Armageddon is a first season episode. I believe I'm right in that. Um, but it's a result of Star Trek being very young, and the fact that the writers were, as I've said many times, the writers were making it up as they went along, and nobody writing Star Trek in 1966 had any clue that people were still going to be watching it and poring over it and obsessing over every detail of it 50 some odd years later. So that I think is the answer to how the Enterprise can have a General Order 24. Tony Nagatani says, are you going to be going to the Vegas 55-year mission this year? What do you think about Paramount blocking the use of Star Trek for any future Star Trek conventions? I am not going to the Vegas convention this year, and I don't. I wasn't aware that Paramount had blocked the use of the name for future Star Trek conventions. I'm not sure. I mean, uh, I suppose it's within Paramount's rights as the IP holder to decide who gets to use their trademark to promote themselves, but it doesn't seem very you know, it's not very neighborly. Right, and it doesn't seem like the sort of thing that you would do if you wanted to continue to foster a good relationship with the broader fan community, that you would say conventions can't use our name, can't use the Star Trek name in their names anymore. So I don't know, that doesn't seem like a very good move to me. It's not a very diplomatic strategy. But I mean, they're certainly legally within their rights to do it. I would assume that it's their trademark. And if they decide that a convention is using it without their authorization or in a way that they don't appreciate or don't approve of, then they have the right to tell them to stop doing it. But I mean, I think they should? Nah, you know, it doesn't seem like a very, it doesn't seem like a very hospitable thing to do. Next question is from Siamac, submitting on a Monday. What? Surely not. I should do that in a George Takei voice. Surely not. Worst Takei ever. Steve, thanks so much for your thoughtful and honest answer last time about the GOP eating itself and our fears about 2022. This time, I'm going in another direction. In the spirit of the Patreon YouTube joint question, what's the best way for us to watch your content? Does it matter if it's on the web or through an app? What about skipping ads? Do you make more if we watch ads in full? Secondarily, how important is watch time? Some YouTubers, not you, have long outros I want to skip, but want them to get the watch time. Interested in the thoughts of, as you say, a professional YouTuber. Well, obviously, it is. First of all, I don't think it makes any difference if you watch on the web or if you watch through an app or if you watch mobile or desktop, or if you're watching an embedded version. As far as I know, that all counts as a view, and I think that's all pretty much the same as far as I'm concerned. Skipping ads, obviously, it's better for me if you don't skip ads. A lot of people don't know this. I'm not really supposed to tell you to watch the ads. Like, I'm not supposed to encourage you to watch the ads. They don't really like that. YouTube doesn't like that. The sponsors don't like that. So I'm not going to say watch the ads. But I do think, I mean, obviously, it's better for me. It's better for content creators who have ads appearing on their videos that they profit from. It's better for viewers to watch the entire ad, of course. But you do whatever you want. And yes, I don't know how important watch time is, but watch time is a factor. I mean, watch time is something that YouTube looks at in terms of how successful your channel is, and how it feeds into the algorithm that determines how much YouTube promotes your channel in some way. I'm not sure how important it is, but I know it is a factor. So yeah, I mean, the longer the watch time, again, the better for me. But as for how important it is, I honestly don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's a factor. And but again, like, I do not hold it against anybody, you or anybody else, whether you're a patron or a member or someone who just watches without being a patron or a member or whatever. If you watch one of my videos, and like for instance, the Trek Actually videos that typically will do a fade out and then I'll fade back up for the sort of post-show couple of minutes where I do the shout outs and I talk about what's coming up next, and I plug the podcasts and the live streams and stuff. I mean, if somebody wanted to skip that, that's completely fine with me. That's kind of why that's designed as a separate hunk on the end. So if you want to skip that, you've gotten the entire main part of the video. But of course, I mean, I try to make those entertaining and useful, and I would love if everybody watched all of it. But you know, it's up to you. That's my completely unhelpful answer, my friend. That it is up to you. Um, Next question is from, let's see here, Andrew Priest. He says, "Hi, Steve. I watched Trek reluctantly the other day and deeply enjoyed the debate regarding bodily autonomy versus the communal good. I came down quite firmly on your side, but it was heartening to see that people on the internet can have utterly opposing ideals and still remain civil and respectful. You've built one hell of a community here, Steve. Progress is a stupendous episode, but can you think of any others that offer two completely understandable but incompatible ideologies? I look forward to seeing you and Dana quote unquote fight over them too. P.S. I'm still blocked and Sarah's a freaking admin. What the heck, dude? And for anybody who doesn't know, Andrew somehow wound up blocked on my YouTube channel, and it must have happened a long time ago because I do not even remember the circumstances that may have led to it. But Andrew, I have tried to unblock you a couple of times, and it's just I think it's a YouTube glitch. I'm gonna keep going back to your channel and clicking the unblock button. And I'm gonna keep trying until it works, because every time I click unblock, it doesn't actually unblock you. Like it just nothing. The status doesn't change, which is really weird, and I've never encountered that before. But I'm going to keep trying. But so thank you for continuing to be a patron, and thank you for your patience, and thank you for not getting too upset that I made Sarah a moderator on the live chat. If I ever unblock your ass, I'll be happy to make you a moderator too. But yeah, Progress is a great episode, and can I think of other episodes that offer completely different but understandable ideologies? Let me think. There's an episode, it's not, I don't think this is an example of two completely, well, maybe it is. It's not necessarily ideologies, it's just two different views of a position that a character was placed in. You remember the episode, oh, it's from season 6, maybe season 5 or 6. It's from relatively late in Deep Space Nine's run, and I think it's called Wrongs Darker Than Death or Night. It's the one where Kira has the orb experience, where she experiences her mother's life, or you know, she basically has an experience where it allows her to meet her mother in the past, when she finds out that her mother was essentially a comfort woman for Gul Dukat, and she realizes that her mother is a collaborator, and she's horrified by this. Her mother was a collaborator with the Cardassians, with the commandant of Terok Nor, with the commandant of the occupation. This is shocking to her, incredibly just wrenching, crushing, disillusioning. But she also learns that she, young little baby Nerys, and her father benefited from her mother doing that, and that the motivating factor behind her mother doing that was to provide a better life for her family in completely impossible circumstances. And so Kira, I don't think Kira necessarily comes away from that episode thinking that her mother did the right thing, but she realizes that it is a much more complex issue than she thought it was, and that she cannot just simply condemn her mother as a collaborator. And by extension, she can't just simply condemn everybody else who was a collaborator either. Maybe some of them she can. Maybe some of them do not have nearly as complicated mitigating circumstances surrounding their decision to collaborate with the Cardassians. Maybe some of them can just be dismissed as collaborators and said, you know, to hell with those people. They don't deserve our sympathy or our understanding. But there are many, many others, presumably, that were in situations similar to Kira's mom, who made a terrible decision that they felt was the best thing they could do under the circumstances. So I think that episode comes close to the kind of thing you're talking about. There aren't necessarily two sides of it. It's not necessarily the kind of sort of thought provoking or conversation starting episode that progress is. Although I guess potentially it could be, but it's the kind of thing where you are introduced to a situation that the point of view character starts out thinking, oh, that's definitely wrong. Nobody should ever do that. There's no excuse for that ever. And by the end of the episode, she has not come around to the opposite opinion, but has come to realize that it's a much more difficult and fraught and complicated decision than she thought it was going in. So that's an episode. And again, just kind of off the top of my head, that's an episode that I thought of. Kave says, if you were forced to pick 5 regular characters from Voyager to be part of a new Star Trek show, which ones would you choose? I mean, that's basically the whole cast. 5 characters from Voyager. That's like everybody. Okay, so who are the 5 regular characters from Voyager that I would pick to be on a new Star Trek show? So I would want Seven. I would want the Doctor. I would want B'Elanna. I would want Tom. And I would want Harry. There you go. Seven, Doctor, B'Elanna, Tom, Harry. There you go. Those are the 5 Voyager characters I would pick if I had to pick 5 for a new Star Trek show. So I guess leaving out Janeway, leaving out Tuvok. Leaving out Chakotay. So yeah, there you go. Speeve. It's almost a really awesome name. I have a simple question for you here, Steve. Buy, rent, remove from existence. Wrath of Khan, Last Jedi, Superman, you evil. You monster. Buy, rent, remove from existence. God. Ugh. Buy Superman, rent Wrath of Khan, remove Last Jedi from existence. I feel like I need to stress, I love The Last Jedi. I'm not picking The Last Jedi because I think it is in any way a bad film. In fact, as I just said on Twitter yesterday, I think The Last Jedi is by far the best of the sequel trilogy of Star Wars, and it's the second best Star Wars movie ever. To me, second only to Empire Strikes Back. I think The Last Jedi is fantastic. But I've only known The Last Jedi for the last few years, and I literally grew up with Superman and Star Trek 2. So I can't just get rid of those. Last Jedi, it's unfortunately, it's a last in, first out situation. No reflection on the quality of the film whatsoever. It's a great film, but does it mean as much to me as Superman or Wrath of Khan? Nope. Sorry. That's the way it's got to be. That hurt, Speeve. That really hurt. Edward Jellicoe. Good evening, Steve. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. I was hoping you could help with a sensitive matter I'm dealing with at work. I can't go into details, but suffice it to say that I've recently taken on a new management role, and well, things aren't really clicking with the team. I'm trying to implement a few changes, and frankly, they are slow to adapt. The guy who had the job before me was decent enough, but he did let things go a bit slack, and it's something I'm keen to address. The staff? Forget it. They're good people, so I'm told, but they are resisting everything I am trying to do. Am I being too harsh? Forcing change so quickly? Should I take the carrot or stick approach? Well, one thing I think you definitely should not do is change the duty rotation from 3 shifts to 4 for no reason whatsoever. I feel like that would be really disruptive if you made those kinds of serious structural changes to the layout of the workday immediately for no reason, or at least not for any reason that you ever bothered to explain. I feel like that would only serve to alienate you further from the people that you are managing, your crew, if you will. So avoid that. Also, if there is, for instance, I don't know, an assistant manager that you personally don't get along with, you need to keep in mind that even though you may not personally get along with them, they may be very popular and trusted by the crew, and you're going to need that popularity and trust on your side to make your transition into the management role go as smoothly as possibly and leave you in place as the most effective leader that you can be. So whatever you do, don't start a bunch of shit with the second in command. Try to make that person your friend and get on their good side, even if there are personality clashes, right? I would definitely avoid making an enemy of that guy. Yeah. Just avoid those two things, and I think you'll be okay. And also, if you make like wacky plans, let the senior staff in on it. Don't just fly off the handle like you're going off half cocked and leave them sort of confused as to what you're doing. Like, bring them into your plans. Let them know what you're doing before you do it. Again, helps to build the confidence, because I think you're fundamentally a good guy and a good leader. And I believe that a lot of the decisions you will make will be the right decisions. It's just a matter of, don't completely alienate the staff on your way to carrying out those decisions. That's all, man. That's all. Frunobulax the Poodle says, oh, this is a good one. If you could reboot Batman 66 with contemporary actors while keeping the campy tone, who would you cast? I'm not going to go through an entire cast here with you, but for Batman, I think the choice is obviously John Hamm. I think if somebody wanted to do a rebooted campy version of Batman in the spirit of Batman 66, top of the list for Bruce Wayne / Batman has got to be John Hamm. I can't think of anybody else who I would even consider for it. I think he would be absolutely perfect. And as for other roles, nobody really jumps to mind as to who would be like a good Robin or, a good choices for the villains. But for the big one, for the lead, I would say for my campy Batman, it would have to be John Hamm. That's almost a no-brainer. Isaiah Taylor says, so let's talk about Star Trek. No TV show has helped me more than Star Trek. It was 2009, and my dad went to jail. I had to move in with my grandmother in Appalachia, in Apalachicola. Ooh, Apalachicola. I was in a whole new town and had few friends. Star Trek saved me as it took me to a whole new place. Fast forward to today, having a bad childhood and at one time going to juvie, Star Trek gave me a future to fight for, a future that I wanted. I didn't want to watch the Kardashians or Teen Mom. I didn't need to hang out with the wrong crowd or dumb down my intelligence. Star Trek, particularly Star Trek The Next Generation, helped me get through a lot of hard times. Whether it be being poor, losing family members, having dead-end jobs, and the like. Star Trek has helped me. I really like the parts in Star Trek where they go back in time to the 20th century. Oh, so goofy. I really like the Voyager one, Future's End, and I wore my monster maroon in San Francisco one time. Yes, it's make-believe, but highly relatable. Bell riots. I agree with you. I mean, I can't honestly say that Star Trek has saved me because I've never had to deal with the kind of experiences that you have, but it has certainly been a very important part of my life and something that I have loved since I was a little kid. And it has stayed with me for decades. And the nice thing about it continuing to produce new material is that it's still like a living organism. I mean, I'm sure if Star Trek had ended with, say, the movies, or if Star Trek had ended with TNG, or, if they hadn't made any new Star Trek at all for 20 or 30 years, I'm sure I would still love Star Trek. I'm sure I would still watch it occasionally today. I would probably even be making YouTube videos about it. Cause even, without the current generation of shows and movies, I mean, there's so much stuff. So it would still be a very important part of my life. But the fact that it's still being actively produced, that there are still people today who are my age and younger than me who are getting to make Star Trek either in front of the camera or behind the camera, the fact that it is still a fresh, vibrant, living franchise that I've been following for my entire life, that's really cool. And really rare. There aren't that many, at least there aren't that many live action franchises that are like that. I mean, you can say that about comic books. I mean, there are long running superhero comics that are twice as old as I am that are still being published regularly and still have stories being told with these wonderful characters. But in terms of live action, like TV and movies, it's a really, really short list of franchises that have been around that long. In fact, Star Trek may be the one that has been around the longest and has produced the most content and is still doing stuff today. So that's really, really cool. And it's like it has grown and evolved and changed along with me as I have grown and evolved and changed. I mean, I can relate. I can't relate to the Star Trek saved me thing, but I can definitely relate to the feeling that Star Trek is a thing, a piece of art, a category of pieces of art um, that has been with me for my entire life pretty much, and it's something that I have valued and treasured and have been able to continually rediscover for my whole life as they continue to make new stuff. And I go back and revisit the old stuff and look at it with fresh eyes. So it's pretty cool. I can see where you're coming from there. It's pretty cool. Oh, here's one from Jason Harding. Hi, Jason. Steve, so anyways, about the biscuits. Now, I told you that I thought the flour was a little iffy and wanted to pick up some more from the Krogans, but you said you needed the car. If you call sitting in the car, in the garage, in the dark, needing the car, well, that's your own wherewithal. So I used the iffy flour, and wouldn't you know, the biscuits tasted stale. Oh, but I suppose you want a question for your little YouTube show, which reminds me, Lorraine's boy, Kevin? Well, he was arrested for exposing himself at the laundromat. He liked the YouTube as well. I certainly hope that you are being careful when you're doing the YouTube. All sorts of, well, those kind of people. Not that there's anything wrong with them. My cousin Annie's daughter knows one. Oh, but look at me getting distracted. Question, question, question. I had one just a minute ago, but I got distracted by the biscuits. Oh, I know. When am I getting a grandchild? Okay. Never. You're never getting a grandchild. You're never getting a grandchild. I'm sorry, Jason. You're never, not for me. I can tell you with a very, very high degree of confidence, not existential certainty, but a very high degree of confidence that you are never getting a grandchild from me. So, sorry. Here's a question from Bruce Bardup, who says the GOP has lost any value it once claimed to have. The Republican Party of sane conservatives is no more. Instead, what we have is a vote-stealing machine, a lie-generating tool apt for Putin's ongoing efforts to divide, antagonize, incite, and destroy us and world democracy with us. Imagine a world with Russian-style elections only and no last best hope. So what must we do? Is there an answer in Star Trek? Does Batman have the bon mot for our times? Is the answer in an obscure novel by a disregarded author or in self-congratulation and smug Mickey taking? What, Steve, is the point of you? Congrats to the new question format. High time, in my opinion. Well, thank you, my friend. And it's always good to see your name pop up and to get comments from you, Bruce, as well. Bruce has been a viewer and supporter of mine for a very long time, and I'm glad that Bruce is still around. I mean, is there an answer in Star Trek? I mean, the answer is to live up to our professed values. And I mean, I think Star Trek and lots of other forms of narrative, lots of other stories and works of art, give us that message. They say, our professed values are pretty good in most democracies, right? Our professed values are pretty good. We say that we care about equality. We care about government limited by a rule of law and subject to the will of the people and empowered by the will of the people with representatives that are elected fairly by the people in accordance with laws. These are all really, we believe in equal opportunity, and we believe in fairness and justice and all of these things. And if we actually lived out those values, then we would be, I don't know if we could say, if we could ever say with confidence, we would be in pretty good shape, but we would certainly be in better shape than we are most of the time now. And one of the problems is that here in the United States, the Republican Party no longer even makes a pretense of living by those values or trying to live by those values. We are no longer in a situation, and we haven't been for a very long time, where it is simply a principled disagreement. It's not as if the Democrats and the Republicans just come down on different sides of the question, but they're both fundamentally fair, good faith actors, and they're just trying to do what they think is best for the country. I don't think you can say that about the Republican Party at this point. I think you have to look at the Republican Party and what they are doing. I mean, today was a good example where there were enough Republicans in the United States Senate to block the creation of an independent commission to investigate the events of January 6th, right? They don't even want to look into it. They don't even want to investigate it. So what do you call that? That's not a difference of opinion. People stormed the Capitol. People stormed the Capitol to try and stop the certification of a lawful and fair presidential election. They tried to stage a coup to keep the defeated president in power. And there were enough Republicans in the United States Senate that just didn't even want to look into it at all, that they were able to block this measure to create a commission. What do you call that? That's not a difference of opinion. That's anti-democratic, right? That is a major political party, one of the two major political parties in this country, willfully acting in a way that is destructive to democracy. Willfully doing something that will cause, that could cause serious harm to one of the most, arguably the most fundamental institution of our society. So, I mean, if you want like a practical solution, what must we do? If you want like a specific practical thing, defeat Republicans in elections, and Democrats who do have power, as they currently have in the federal government, need to use the tools at their disposal to defeat the Republicans in the legislature if they need. I mean, God, why are we still fighting about getting rid of the filibuster? Get rid of the filibuster. Why are we still fighting about, oh, geez, the reconciliation process really meant for this kind of a bill? Do whatever you can do within the bounds of the law to get your agenda passed and to stop the Republicans from blocking and destroying everything, because that is what they would do if they were in your place. That's what they're doing now. When they're in the minority, they're using the rules as much as they can and breaking them when they have to, or just flat out ignoring them when it suits them, in order to block the agenda and to push their stuff continually forward. The Democrats need to stop playing nice and stop treating the Republicans as though they are good faith actors when they clearly are not. So, I mean, you want a specific solution? Stop treating the Republicans as though they are good faith actors who are just on the other side of the aisle in a democracy, and start treating them like what they are, which is a lawless insurrectionist party that is actively trying to destroy this government and destroy democracy. That's something, right? And more generally speaking, try to actually live by our stated values. Ahoyerno, is there any specific A squared holes you're channeling for your Ask a Professional YouTuber series? It has some amazing vibes. A stands for atheist. Aholes, yes. It was a footnote. No, nobody specific. And I see what you're getting at there with it has some amazing vibes. That's not consciously where I'm going with that at all. That character is another version of a character that I love to play, that I've played in my stuff, and that I mostly am playing on the Ensign's log as well when I'm doing Ensign Johnson on the Ensign's log. To at least part of his character is similar to the version of me that you see in Ask a Professional YouTuber, and that you see in a slightly less harsh, maybe more reasonable, more likable form in the Stuffy videos, which is just me being a huge asshole. Just, me being the smuggest, and not just smug, but most clueless and delusional and wrong and abrasive version of myself. because I think that's funny. I think that's a really good way to make fun of myself and also to make fun of real people who are actually like that. And it's just so much fun to write and so much fun to play. Like there are jokes that I've told uh through that Ask a Professional YouTuber show that I think are some of the funniest gags I've ever written for a video. I mean, there was, and what makes them funny is that character of a completely overconfident, clueless guy who thinks he is the shit, who thinks he is the greatest thing to ever hit Earth. And he is so smart and he knows all the answers to all the questions, and he has not a glimmer of awareness of what a buffoon he is. Like that's the character that I'm going for in those Ask a Professional YouTuber videos. And I'm not trying to emulate any particular real person, but yeah, there are unfortunately a lot of actual people, including here on YouTube and elsewhere in the broader world, that are like that. That persona is sort of riffing on, and yeah, but no, I'm not going for any specific person. Yeah. Dana says, "Will you please tell us about the most interesting thing you've experienced this week?" Winky smiley. I will, Dana. There were lots of interest. It's hard to choose what the most interesting thing I've experienced this week. I've experienced lots of interesting things. Let me see. I made tunaless tuna salad for the first time. With smashed chickpeas instead of tuna, and it turned out really good. I was really happy with it. I'm definitely going to make it again. Um, I watched the new Quibi version of The Fugitive from last year, which I talked about a little bit on our live stream on Wednesday. Um, I got a vasectomy on Monday. I watched some of the A&E WWE wrestler documentaries that they've been releasing for the last month or so, and some of them were really interesting. And I wrote a video. I started writing a video about it. Actually, I haven't finished it yet because I want to watch all of the documentaries first before I completely finish writing it. But I wrote a bunch of it already, just based on thoughts I've had on the episodes that I have watched. So yeah, that was an interesting experience. Either so maybe that or the vasectomy. Can't pick between those two. One of those two was the most interesting thing that I've experienced this week. One of those two. So yeah. On I in the chat, Dana says I'm a terrible liar. That's that just hurtful. It's just hurtful because it's fairly accurate. So yeah, that one of those was the most interesting thing. But anyway, next question is from Ian, who says, "Curious about your thoughts on one." It's never a good sign when a question starts with a number, like there's multiple questions. But I'll let it slide this time, Ian. Thank you for the question, and thank you for being a supporter. So, curious about your thoughts on one. When someone's transported, they slide 3 sliders. Makes me think, isn't that a risky thing not to have a master slider for? What if your finger slips and you only move 2? Does the transporter get ripped? Does the transportee get ripped in half? Worse, by George. Of course, it's only because it looks slightly cooler, but still one wonders. 2, Discovery Season 3. My main complaint. First, 'twas suggested the Federation has rotted from the inside out, but then 'twas a natural disaster and implied that it was caused by the Fed's hubris. Not as interesting as xenophobia, factionalism, etc. That must be overcome to reunite, but still interesting. But then 'twas all just a silly coincidence of a child who gained superpowers and whoops, no more dilithium, but 'twasn't our fault. I feel like many shows do this, undercut their own premise. Bummer. 3, Only Me. I like the end of season 3 uniforms, gray with color, better than the season 4 uniforms. Gray ones remind me of the second uniforms of Deep Space Nine, which I loved. Plus, they're more uniform. So, okay, let me go through. I do like what we've seen of the season 4 uniforms better. I mean, I like the gray, but I like the pop of color too. Like I like the more colorful uniforms, even though I do. I mean, you're the gray shouldered jumpsuit uniforms from First Contact and from the latter seasons of Deep Space Nine. I really like those too. But I feel like the uniforms at the end of season 3 of Discovery were a little too gray. Like they're just too gray. So I like what we've seen of the season 4 uniforms a lot better. And I think what you're saying about season 3 of Discovery about how they sort of undermine their own premise is valid. I do think it would have been more interesting if it had turned out that the factionalism within the Federation had been the major factor of its dissolution rather than the burn. So I mean, I'm with you there. And yeah, you're right. I mean, why are there 3 sliders for the transporter? Because it looks cool and because it creates the impression that it is a more technically complex operation, right? You get the feeling that, well, there's like a precision to it. You have to move these 3 sliders together or move them in a certain way, and you have to be trained to do this. You have to be a transporter technician. Any old person can't just step in front of the control panel and start moving around. You have to know what you're doing and control the sliders just right. So it's sort of subtly through a visual cue, it creates the impression that this is a very complex operation that must only be performed by trained professionals. Um, but basically, what you're saying is true. I think that it looks cool. It looks cool. Philip K. Philip K. says, "Hey Steve, I work as a custodian at an elementary school on the night shift in rural Michigan. Part of my job is removing graffiti from the bathroom stall walls. Normally it's just swear words, but a few weeks ago someone had written 'fuck Biden, Trump 2020,' and on a different day, possibly the same kid, I'm not sure, wrote 'fuck N words,' except they actually wrote the N word. Again, this is an elementary school. The oldest students are in 5th grade, 10 to 11-year-olds. My question for you is, how did we get to this point as a country that children are behaving like this?" Um, I'm not saying that you're wrong to be upset and shocked and disturbed by it, because I do think, I mean, anytime you would encounter a situation where there are young children that are expressing thoughts like that, I think that it's something to be concerned about. But when I was in elementary school, and I'm 41, so we're talking like 30 years ago, we're talking like the 1980s and early 90s. I remember people talking like, I remember fellow students, not a lot, but some. I remember some fellow students of mine, once we got up to maybe 3rd or 4th or 5th grade, talking like that. Not necessarily making specific reference to politics, but saying the N word. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in an overwhelmingly white, very rural, very conservative area, and that kind of open racism, it would not have been tolerated in class. Like if a teacher heard a kid say something like that, they would have gotten in big trouble for that. But when the teachers weren't around, when nobody but kids were listening, and when they knew that they were among people that wouldn't give them shit for it, um, I it was not unusual for me in my elementary school to hear, you know, 9 and 10 and 11-year-olds saying the N-word. And that's awful. I mean, I wish that it were not so. It's, looking back on it now, I realize how terrible that is and how sad that is, that young children had already had that kind of language normalized in their vocabulary, and they thought that that was okay to express those kinds of thoughts, to have those kinds of thoughts, and then to freely express them among their friends. It's terrible. But I mean, in my experience, at least, it's nothing new. It's something that was a part of my childhood as well. So I mean, you say you're in rural Michigan, so I don't know what the history there is or what your experience was when you were a kid. If maybe if you didn't hear your peers talk like that when you were in elementary school, but I did. So I mean, I'm with you that it's terrible. I'm with you that it's a really bad thing that you're rightly upset about. But I mean, how did we let the country get to this point? I mean, the country's been at this point for a while, unfortunately, and that is something that I remember from my childhood, which is now a disconcertingly long time ago. So, um, Agent Meister Steve-O, I hope this finds you well. I seem to recall you saying something a while back about Jerry Ryan liking a tweet you posted or something, although I could just be mixing this up with a dream I had. Was it a dream, Steve, or did the aforementioned Borg drone acknowledge your existence? Either way, who is the most famous Trek alumnus you have interacted with other than Jerry Ryan? They can be someone who worked on either side of the camera, but the interaction must be one-to-one. Being part of a crowd and a convention is not good enough unless the person you interacted with answered a question you asked. I will also accept interaction over social media. Again, once it was one-to-one and you were not part of a WhatsApp or Snapchat group or whatever. Also, which would you prefer? Human-sized chicken legs or chicken-sized human legs? Keep up the great work. Live long and prosper. The Meister has spoken. I think the Jerry Ryan interaction, which was minimal. I think Jerry Ryan, someone tweeted a link to one of my videos at Jerry Ryan, and she replied to it. So she wasn't necessarily responding directly to me on Twitter, but she was responding to someone who tweeted one of my videos, and her response suggested that she had watched the video or had at least watched part of it, right? So yeah, that is the most extensive interaction I've ever had with an actual cast member of a Star Trek show. Jonathan Frakes liked one of my tweets once, I think, and I think a few weeks ago, the Seventh Rule podcast, which is a podcast that is co-hosted by Sirach Lofton, who played Jake on Deep Space Nine, liked one of my tweets or replied to one of my tweets or something like that. So it's just been stuff like that. So, I mean, I've never had any significant interaction with an actual Star Trek cast member or producer or anybody like that. But the Jerry Ryan thing is the most extensive interaction. And that, again, that was just barely. And other than her, I mean, the one I was the most pleased with was, of course, the Frakes one. Like, Jonathan Frakes liked one of my tweets. Like, this has been like 2 years ago now, and I don't even remember. I think it might have been like it was Commander Riker Day, or it was his birthday or something, and I tweeted something, and somebody else retweeted it, and he somehow saw it and liked it, and it was something like that. So that's probably, other than the Jerry Ryan one, that's probably the one that I'm the most. And honestly, I'm more excited about that one than I am about the Jerry Ryan one, because that was Jonathan Frakes, and I love Jerry Ryan, and it was awesome that she apparently watched my video. Like, I'm super thrilled with that. But I mean, it's Jonathan Frakes. Like, I've got his goddamn picture on my wall. So come on. But yeah, that. And what would I rather have? Human-sized chicken legs or chicken-sized human legs? I'd rather have human-sized chicken legs, because I like being tall. Toilet Blaze, Steve. Remember John Lennon? Imagine a world without companies and a world without a government where a leader could rise and be a terrible leader. What if that society existed? No companies that could be formed, no government that could support armed forces or police. I can see that society. What I can't see is labor being encouraged by anyone. You remove the government of the United States, arguably the largest employer in the United States, and its associated regions, and unemployment would be immense. You take away the idea of companies and unemployment goes up even higher. And anyone who is given a podium is only going to eventually be replaced by a terrible leader. So you can't win by allowing anyone who's making good suggestions. So my question is, how will jobs be created in this no government, no companies world? Will it be every worker for themselves, as no one should be allowed to employ anyone else? Damn, I thought this would be a short question. That sounds like a question that someone who is much more interested and informed about anarchist theory should be answering. It doesn't sound at all like a world that I would be interested in living in, or a society that I would be interested in living in. I think here's the thing. If we're going to do that, if we're going to create a society where there's no companies, where there's no employment, then first you need to detach survival from employment. One of the biggest fundamental problems with our society now is that we have fused your ability to get basic needs met with whether or not you can work, right? And that's a big problem. And I think we can solve that problem and should solve that problem without completely getting rid of the government or getting rid of major important institutions. I think we can keep more or less the same societal arrangement that we have now and just create an environment, a society where people no longer need to be employed, no longer need to be able to trade their labor for money in order to get the necessities of life so that they don't die and so that they can, in fact, not only survive, but have a decent quality of life, right? I think you need to take care of that before you start talking about let's get rid of the government and let's get rid of corporations and let's not have anybody employed by anybody else. And like that all sounds nice. But as long as labor, as long as the ability to trade labor for your basic survival needs is the arrangement, then, I mean, obviously anything that prevents people from doing that is going to cause untold suffering. So you're going to have to solve that problem first. And then we can talk about how do we arrange society if we don't have a government or we don't have companies or whatever. And in fact, do we even want to do that? Which again, I'm not an anarchist. I don't really want to do that. I don't really see how that would work, especially long term with a country the size of our country with such a large population and such a heavily armed population. But that's another. But it's probably a question that could be given a much more complete and thoughtful answer from someone who is actually much better versed in anarchist theory than I am. Because even though I disagree with him and I don't think it would work, there are anarchists who have put a lot of time and a lot of thought into coming up with answers for those kinds of questions. And one of them would be better equipped to provide an answer than I am. General Contact Unit Problem Child says, are science fiction tropes the only reason we think aliens must be responsible for UFOs? I read a Scientific American article about all the UFO stuff the Pentagon has put out. It pointed out that we only think of aliens when we see weird stuff in the sky because of tropes from sci-fi stories. The idea that aliens would come to Earth only to like buzz around in the high atmosphere, covertly observing humans, that comes from sci-fi, not anything scientists have said about how aliens would realistically act. Like, imagine a world where there's a whole genre of fictional stories about mole people secretly visiting the surface. If giant holes suddenly started appearing in the ground with no explanation, people in that world might assume some underground civilization is creating them, just because that's a popular trope in their fictional stories. Would them jumping to that conclusion be any less reasonable than us jumping to space aliens when we see grainy recon footage of a thing in the sky? No. And I think that's a really good point. And you're right. I don't think I read that exact same Scientific American article, but I remember reading something a long time ago, like back when I was a teenager, about how the uptick in UFO sightings and the number of people who assumed that UFOs were aliens didn't really start until the 1950s, when popular science fiction really, became a cultural staple, when people really started, going to sci-fi movies and reading sci-fi magazines and comics and, short stories and seeing science fiction on TV that depicted alien visitations and things like that. Like the amount of UFO sightings and the nature of claims of encounters with UFOs involving aliens really blew up when aliens became a part of fiction and a part of popular culture. And yeah, that's not a coincidence. I don't think. I think it's safe to say that's not a coincidence that the popular culture definitely had an influence. Now, is that, and I think you're right, that if instead of aliens, if mole people had been the more popular trope in popular fiction, yeah, I think you're right. Maybe that would have been the case. So I don't think that science fiction tropes are the only reason that people assume that unidentified flying objects are due to aliens, but I think it's a big part of it. I think there are cultural factors at play, just like there are cultural factors at play that cause people to assume that certain unexplained events that they might see in their house or at a location that was the scene of a crime or the site of a terrible battle or a terrible disaster in the past were caused by ghosts. You know, like there's a cultural thing that happens there that causes people to jump to that particular incorrect conclusion. If you are a superstitious person and you're looking at a photograph of something, you know, in your house and you see orbs in the picture, you're more likely, if you think that there is any sort of paranormal explanation, if you're not down with the whole motes of dust being reflected on by the camera flash theory, that is the reason that you sometimes see orbs in photographs. If you think that's not the real explanation, you're more likely to assume that it's ghosts than to assume it's aliens, because we don't associate aliens with household weirdness, you know, or you know, historical site weirdness. We associate aliens with shit that happens in the sky, with unidentified flying objects, because that's where we think aliens are. We don't assume so. And yeah, it's very much a cultural thing. I think there's a lot of cultural influence behind it for sure. Next question is from Z. On the TNG episode Sarek, Captain Picard mentions to Riker that he met him briefly as a lieutenant at his son's wedding. Which son is he referring to? Pretty sure it wasn't Spock, and Memory Alpha doesn't list any wives for Sybok. What did I miss? I think at the time that was probably meant as a reference to Spock. It's possible that Spock got married in the interval between the end of the classic Trek era that we see in Star Trek VI, and the next time we see him in Unification. I mean, you got to figure there's about what would it be? Maybe about 80 years, 70 or 80 years of Spock's life that is largely unaccounted for within canonical Star Trek productions, because he goes from Star Trek VI, which is in the late 23rd century, and then he doesn't pop up again until about halfway through TNG, which is in the mid to late 24th century. So there's a big chunk of his life that we've really never heard anything about on a TV show or a movie, that he could have gotten married. You know, and who knows what the story was with that. So I always interpreted that as being intended as a reference to Spock. It could also have been a reference to another son that Sarek has besides Spock or Sybok that we just don't know about. Sarek could have had other kids that perhaps were born after. I mean, who knows how long Vulcan males are able to sire children. I mean, it could have been a completely different son of Sarek other than Sybok or Spock. So who knows? Who knows who it was? It's not those are the sorts of things that I tend to not overthink. I take that as, I assume it's meant as a reference to Spock, and it's referring to something that we just never heard about because it was never specifically referenced in a story. But it could have been to someone else. Who knows? Alice Louise Watson says, I've been fostering dogs for the past 2 years with this great San Francisco Bay Area org, Hopalong. I am getting 2 puppies this weekend, and it's hard coming up with new names. So suggestions? Steve and Jason. You should name your dogs Steve and Jason. Or maybe you could name them Barkley and Riker, or you could name them Splunk and Johnson. Depends on what specific Ensign's log reference you want to make. But I would highly recommend that you name them after an Ensign's log reference. That is my suggestion. Matthew Zeidman says, hi, Steve. I watched your latest Trek Actually comment response video and noticed that one of the commenters you highlighted referred to Data as a, quote, good representation of a person with high functioning autism. While I'm not going to wag my finger at the commenter, if that is the language they are comfortable describing themselves with, I still thought it important to let your neurotypical viewers know that using the terms high functioning and low functioning to describe neurodivergent individuals is considered reductive and insulting by many in the autistic community. In a nutshell, such language divides those on the spectrum into 2 arbitrary categories based on their perceived worth to a neurotypical society. Here's an article by autistic YouTuber Andy Burns, which does an excellent job explaining why this language is problematic. If you'd like to share the link, and there's the link there on the screen, if anybody wants to check it out. And that is a really good point. I'm glad that you brought that up. And the way you describe why it is considered a problem, because it divides autistic people into categories based on the tastes or the priorities of neurotypical people. That is a really good point, and that is something that occurs over and over again when we're talking about vocabulary used to refer to not just people with disabilities, but with any marginalized group. If the vocabulary and the categorization is something that was created and based on the sensibilities of a privileged group as opposed to the actual people in the marginalized group, that's often going to be a problem. And that's something that we should guard against, and we should seek to correct when marginalized people point that out to us. And they say, hey, actually, that's a word that was used by privileged people to refer to us, and a lot of us don't actually like it, and we have this other term that a lot of us use that we think is better. Like, we need to be open to that correction. So thank you for pointing that out, that high functioning and low functioning autism is considered a problematic term by a lot of people, by a lot of neurodivergent people. I think that's really important for people like me who are neurotypical to be aware of, and to know that there is that concern in the community about that. So thank you very much for bringing that up. I really appreciate it. And again, on your screen there is the link to that article by Andy Burns talking about why the term is a problem. And let me see. Next question is from Eric Allen, the ruler of Allentown. Eric says, all right, Steve, it's been a while since I've engaged our wonderful community here. Miss you guys. Things have been very busy lately in the kingdom of Allentown. Establishing a new regime is tough work. Anyway, I figured I'd ask you a divisive question that is a heated topic of debate amongst my team at work for well over a year now. Pancakes or waffles? Obviously, the answer is pancakes, but I can appreciate how the plebeians love themselves some waffles. And no, we're not accepting French toast or crepes as a valid answer. Pancakes or waffles? It's a simple question. A baby could answer it. Anyway, thank you for all you do, my friend. I miss you all. Well, thank you very much, Eric. And I miss you too. And it's always nice to hear from you. And I'm glad things are going well in the kingdom of Allentown. I am going to court your royal wrath and disagree with you and say that I'm going to say waffles. However, I'm going to qualify my answer. I say waffle and I will also explain my reasoning. So, to me, both pancakes and waffles serve the same function, and choosing which one is better is a matter of judging which one serves that function most efficiently and most effectively. To me, the function of both pancakes and waffles is to serve as a delivery system to transport maple syrup and melted butter into my mouth. And in that capacity, I think waffles are clearly superior because they have the little nooks, they have the little holes, right? The little squares in waffles that when you spread the butter over the hot waffle and it melts and it goes down into the little reservoir, and then you dribble the syrup over it, it holds it captures the syrup. So you can get more syrup and more butter into your mouth per bite because the waffle has trapped it. It has held it in like a Venus flytrap, right? So for that reason, I prefer waffles. The qualification is this. If you are making the waffle or pancake yourself, like if you're going out to a restaurant or you're getting like pre-made, like, toaster or microwave, whatever, or someone else is making them for you, doesn't matter. And by the way, pancakes are fantastic too. I would never turn up my nose at pancakes. It's purely a matter of if you have a choice between the two, which one is better. If you're making them yourself, pancakes do have the advantage of being far easier to make because you do not need specialized equipment. For a waffle, to make a homemade waffle, you will require a waffle iron. To make a pancake, all you need is a hot surface, a frying pan, a griddle, the kind of thing that we all have. Everybody who cooks at home has a frying pan. Lots of people have electric griddles or grill pans that they can put over a burner and it has a flat side, right? This is equipment that a lot of us have that we use for all kinds of other food preparations. So if you want to make your own pancakes, it's far easier to make your own pancakes than to make waffles. So if you're talking about it from that perspective and you're not just going to eat it, but you're going to make it yourself, then I would give the advantage to pancakes. But if we're talking just about their inherent value as a maple syrup and butter delivery system, then my answer is waffles. And I'm sorry if I am now persona non grata in Allentown. But I have to be honest, and I have to tell it like I see it, and that is that's where I come down on that very contentious and very important issue. So there you go. And I hope that this will not tear our community apart. That I have chosen a side in the great pancake waffle debate, and it is waffles. Some random geek who is sorry about not asking a question and instead just ranting. You know what, geek? You know what? If you're really sorry, you would change your behavior. Anyway, if the problem was only police brutality, greenhouse gas emissions, poverty wages, transphobic laws, voter suppression, seasonal wildfires, refugee migration, fossil fuels, conversion therapy, gun violence, military coups, campaign finance, anti-vax conspiracies, universal health care, the endless wars, social media radicalization, indigenous sovereignty, exploitation of the third world, the war on drugs and terror, religious bigotry, systemic racism, political corruption, rising fascism, or climate change, if there were only a few critical problems, I probably believe reform was all we'd need. Simple tweaks to the existing system that would make it work better for everyone. But it's far more than a few problems. And those problems are not isolated from each other. We need to tear down these systems that control our lives. We need to change the values that guide our society. We need revolutionary action to remake the world into one that serves the needs of all people. So I get, you've said things like this before many times. I get the impression that you're just that you're venting here. So but at the same time, I think, I've responded to a lot of these things in the past. But reform isn't necessarily just a few tweaks to the system. Reform can be so even substantial sounds like not enough of a term, right? Reform can be transformative to a system, even reform that is short of revolutionary. Like the kinds of reforms that may be necessary could be that you can still have a fundamental transformation of a system without completely throwing it all out the window and starting over from scratch. Or as anarchists want to do, complete throwing out the entire idea of, not having institutions like that at all, like not having a government in the sense that we think of it now, like just not having it at all. Not just getting rid of our current government and starting a new one, but just getting rid of our current government and just not having one, right? That's short of that kind of revolutionary change. You can still have significant reforms that would make a huge difference in people's lives. Getting those reforms in place, accomplishing them is another matter, but just on paper, in theory, if we're just talking about ideas of how do we make things better, reform doesn't necessarily consist of just a few simple tweaks here and there to the existing system. It would not be easy, and it would not be simple, and it would not probably be just a few tweaks. It would be transformative. but it would be short of the kind of revolution that you are, I think, advocating for. Um, Another problem I have is that a lot of the issues that you bring up in your question, um, like refugee migration, like climate change and fossil fuels, like gun violence, like conspiracy theories, uh, I don't see how an anarchist revolution would fix those problems. Um, I suppose you could say climate change would be helped if we completely did away with industry, if we completely did away with um, with the activity, the industrial activities that are responsible for most of the greenhouse gases and most of the substances that are driving climate change. And yes, that would make a very positive difference. And I know that not all anarchists and many anarchists do not advocate for that. Like there's sort of a stereotype that all anarchists would love to see us return to some kind of primitive hunter-gatherer society, and that has not been my experience at all. I've most anarchists I have interacted with are not calling for that sort of a thing, and are not would not be looking forward to living in that kind of a society. But there are some that do, or at least seem to believe that that would be better than what we have now. So maybe in that extreme case, it would be good for climate change. But short of something like that, like I don't see how the kind of revolution that you're talking about would necessarily be a good thing for climate change or for uh, the spreading of conspiracy theories or for gun violence. I think, and in the complete absence of a government, I think gun violence might actually get a lot worse under certain circumstances. I mean, I don't think even some of the problems you are saying, and I mean, religious bigotry. How would religious bigotry be ameliorated by an anarchist revolution? I don't see how it applies. And then there's also the problem that I mean is sort of the fundamental problem that I have with what you're saying, which is, okay, you say that we need to have revolutionary change to remake the world. Okay, so how do we do it? What specifically are you saying we should do? And how specifically will you prevent those problems from also being problems in your new society, in your post-revolutionary society? And it's not just on you. I've never heard anybody describe to me in a way that I find credible how that would work, and or why I should have confidence that the post-revolutionary society, whatever it may look like, and that's a whole other issue, like what would it even look like? How would it even work? And not just how would it work in terms of, like how is it supposed to work, but practically speaking, how would it work? How would you maintain it? How would it continue to do what you think it needs to do for generation after generation after generation? And but how would it solve or at least largely address the problems that need to be addressed? Like those are, when you say revolution, you're basically just saying, let's just wave a magic wand and fix it. That you're saying there's this magical fix in the future, and we need to do this thing that will fix everything. And my question is how, and why should I be assured that that would work any better? You know? And I have never heard an answer to that question that I find satisfactory. We share many of the same goals. I mean, the idea of, making the world into a world that serves the needs of all people, making a more just and equal society, getting rid of poverty, getting rid of exploitation, getting rid of war, getting rid of violence, or I mean, God, of course, that's what I want. But why is your way the only way to do it? Why is your way the best way to do it? And that's the question that I keep getting hung up on. Here's a question from my old buddy Joe McClory, who says, I missed last time, so I was not able to ask a follow-up to your answer to SRG's question. I believe you think that the world, the US, every state, and probably every city, town, and village would be better if people had more equity of both resources and more freedom of choice. Do you think that even in a more ideal version of our system now, that it wouldn't be worth the risk of instability to try out elements of more fair systems? Can you imagine yourself pushing against changing the system for the better for fear of it harming the system? Not if I honestly believe it was a change for the better. I mean, I think you kind of, I don't think you meant to, but I think you sort of built the answer into your question. I mean, if I believed that the change would be for the better, then I would not want to push against it. Now, if there was a change that other people said would be for the better, but that I didn't think would be for the better, then yeah, I would. Then I wouldn't be in favor of it. It would. It's very much dependent on what the change would be, and it goes back to my answer to SRG's question just now, which is what is the change? What do you intend for it to accomplish, and how will that be accomplished? And what price do we pay? That's another thing that I didn't mention, but that's something that Dana brings up a lot. And Dana is also an anarchist, but she, when we've had conversations about this, and when she and SRG have talked about this, that is a point that she brings up repeatedly, which is what would be the cost of this revolution? Who would it hurt? Who would die? And how would you prevent the most vulnerable people in our society now, the people that are marginalized, the people that are impoverished, the people that don't have resources or the privileges that many of us do? How would you prevent them from bearing most of the cost in terms of lives and loss of property and loss of everything? How would you guarantee that the people who are suffering the most now would not suffer the most as a result of your revolution? And if you can't answer that question, then maybe you should not be advocating for a revolution until you can figure out how to prevent that, or how to deal with that problem. And I think that's an important question. And I think that the nature of the change being sought, and the answers to those questions about how are we going to do this, how is this going to work, how is this going to be better, what is this going to cost us, need to be in place. And if I'm not satisfied with those answers personally, then I won't be able to support it. Like, it's as simple as that. But if I did, if I were persuaded that it would be an improvement, and that it would be practical, that it's something that could actually be achieved and it would work, sure, I would support it. Sure, I would support it. Here's a question from Angus. Evening, Steve. As 2021 continues its turgid path of some hope smothered by resignation and some despair, what are your favorite dystopian sci-fi films and why? We all know Soylent Green is coming, and if you have not said Brazil by the end of this answer, that would be a mistake, resulting in a call from information retrieval. Yeah, Brazil would be on the list for sure. What's another great dystopian film? A lot of the dystopian films that I like the best are the ones that veer more toward sort of pulp action, sort of pulp sci-fi. Like, John Carpenter's Escape from New York, I think, is great. Not what I would call a serious film, but and some of Carpenter's other work too. Like, I don't know if you could necessarily call They Live. They Live might kind of be dystopian, depending on how you define dystopia. But I would put They Live in that category too. And Blade Runner is a great one. What's another good dystopian? Oh, and as far as like a more serious one, and then Blade Runner's kind of serious too, but Blade Runner is also like a fun sort of, dark pulp sci-fi movie, like a neo-noir. And as to why, like for Blade Runner, it would be the style and the tone and just the fact that I love film noir and I love detective stories, and it's sort of that, but set against the backdrop of this dystopian future. It's just a really great, fun, stylish, awesome movie. But also the movie The Road, based on the Cormac McCarthy novel with Viggo Mortensen in the lead, is really, really good, and is a much more sort of serious look at people trying to survive in a totally collapsed society, and I think that's a really good one. The 1995 TV miniseries of The Stand and The Stand, the novel, the original novel, is good. But you said films, so I'll say that the 90s miniseries of The Stand is really good. Is one of my favorites. I didn't like the new version, the version that was on Paramount Plus this year. Um, had a great cast and it was really well made, but it just seemed kind of meandering and pointless and really poorly structured and just kind of went over like a wet fart. Like it just, I didn't really care about any of it. It didn't really have any kind of impact. It didn't grab me at all. But that 90s TV version of The Stand with Gary Sinise and Molly Ringwald and Corin Nemec and Jamie Sheridan as Randall Flagg was really good. So I'll put that on the list too. But those are some of the ones that just popped to mind as favorite dystopian films and TV shows. And finally, last question from Relic 5000. Hey, Steve, how goes things? Have you met any of the Trek cast members in real life? If so, who? Are there any still with us, cast members you want to meet? I have never actually met any of them in the sense that I've never had like a conversation with any of them. I've been to a couple of conventions where there were Star Trek cast members there, but I never interacted with them. I've never done the thing where like I, stood in line and paid for a picture or paid for an autograph. And I'm not like demeaning anybody who's done that. Like I know there are people I follow on Twitter. There are people that I know and fans who have, met Star Trek actors at conventions and had pictures taken with them and had a chance to chat with them for a few seconds. And they feel like, to them, those are incredibly important experiences to them. And I'm not trying to take that away from them at all. Like, I think that's wonderful, but I've just never been intrigued by that. Like, I don't think that would really mean anything to me, to pay however much, 20 bucks, 30 bucks, 50 bucks, however much, to stand in line and get a picture taken with somebody and say hi for a few seconds and then move on to the next person in line. Like that doesn't interest me. Um, but no, I've never, I mean, and I've never had the opportunity to meet any of them in any other way. I do have a story though. It's not my story. I was on the premises when this happened, but I did not actually witness this, but I heard this secondhand from one of my friends who was there and who it did happen to. So this was um, about, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I was at a regional convention in Gettysburg. That would be of the Battle of Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. And me and some friends of mine who were in an independent film company called Neon Reel, we were tabling at this convention, and we were also having our film, which I had co-written and co-starred in, The Devil and Tom Marcos, was screening at the film festival part of this convention. And it was being shown on a big screen in a real movie theater, and it was really cool because I think it was a first for us, to get to see our movie on shown on a screen in a theater with people, right? And we were really psyched about that. And we were at this convention, and there were some Star Trek people at the convention. I think Denise Crosby was there, and Malcolm McDowell. Malcolm McDowell was there, Dr. Soren from Star Trek Generations. And um, one night after the convention had closed and all of the visitors, all of the customers, the patrons had gone home, I think was already up in my hotel room, but some of my friends were downstairs uh, cleaning up and, just sort of interacting with some of the other people. And they were done and they were walking to the elevator. And ahead of them on the way to the elevator was Malcolm McDowell and Dee Wallace and who else? Who was the last guy? Mike Dee Wallace and Ray Wise. Oh, Ray Wise, Laura Palmer's Leland Palmer from Twin Peaks. So okay, so it's Dee Wallace and Malcolm McDowell and Ray Wise, and they're on their way to the elevator, and they get on the elevator, and two of my friends are like 15, 20 feet behind them, and they're on their way to the elevator too, and uh Dee Wallace and Malcolm McDowell and Ray Wise get on the elevator, and Malcolm McDowell has been drinking a little. He's a little tipsy, and they get on the elevator and they see that my friends are in front of them, and they ask if they want to get on the elevator too. And my friend Eric sort of waves them off politely and says, "No, that's okay. You three take the elevator. We'll get the next one." Right. And Malcolm McDowell says, "Oh, thank you very much." And they close the elevator door. And after the door closes, my friend Eric steps up and pushes the button. But he pushed the button too soon. The elevator car had not yet left. So when he pushed the button, the door just opened right back up. So Malcolm McDowell and Dee Wallace and Ray Wise were still standing there in the elevator that had just closed. It opens back up. Drunk Malcolm McDowell realizes what just happened, and he leans over at the waist, like bends over in half, and like some kind of a troll, and crouches there and points at my friend Eric, who had pushed the button, and goes, "Bad form!" And then pushes the closed door button, and the elevator leaves. So that's the story. Didn't happen to me. I was not there, or at least I was not there when this actually, I was in the hotel, but I wasn't there when it happened. And yeah, so my friend Eric, who was there with me and a bunch of the rest of us for the film festival, got yelled at by a drunk Dr. Sarin because he accidentally reopened the elevator door before it had a chance to leave. So that's the close, and that's sort of a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon close encounter, but nothing like that has ever happened to me, but that's the closest I can come. Yeah. Bad form. So yeah, but anyway, that's it for the patron questions. Thank you all so much. I'm now going to turn to questions from the live chat. So let me see. And do I need to reload my live chat viewer? Apparently I do. Or there it goes. Hi, live chat people. And I see I have missed a couple of super chats. So thank you all for being generous. There is a super chat from John Burns, of course. Thank you, John, who says, "So whose side are you on? Johnny Depp's, Amber Heard's, or I'm sorry, John, but I'm running away screaming from this question." In that case, I am on Amber Heard's side. And also, there's a super chat from Stephen G. Clenart. Thank you, Stephen, for your generosity, who says, "My Voyager 5, Naomi Wildman, Vorik, Lon Suter, and the Delaney sisters." Oh, I like that. That's a pull from Voyager lore, the Delaney sisters. That's a good one. And thank you for the super chat as well, my friend. And by the way, I want to correct an oversight that I said to Alice Watson during her question about fostering dogs, and I said you should name your dogs after Ensign's log references. I realized that I didn't actually. I said you should name them Steve and Jason. I realized that I don't know the sex of the puppies, and there could. They could be two boys, in which case Steve and Jason would be appropriate. But if one of the puppies is a girl, you should totally name one of them Dana, after Dana, because now and that it was terribly, terribly short-sighted of me and wrong not to suggest that if you're going to name the puppies after an Ensign's log reference, that if one of them is a girl, you should name that dog. You should name the girl dog Dana, and then name the boy dog either Steve or Jason. I think in that case it should clearly be Steve, but it's up to you. And if I know some people are saying, well, what if both dogs are girls, Steve? Well, then you name one of them Dana, and then you definitely name the other one Steve, because Steve can also be a girl's name. Stevie Nicks. Hello. So there you go. Anyway, I apologize, Dana, for leaving you out of the Ensign's log puppy name equation. But yes. Oh, Dana, that's so awesome. Dana has an even better idea. If they are two girls, then name them Lenore and Tina. That's even better. So there, oh, there's so many Ensign's log references that you could make. Oh, Stephen Clenard says, name them the Delaney sisters. You could do that too. Precambrian Lullaby says, have you read The White Knight yet? I have not. Oh, super chat from Trick Simpson. Thank you, my friend. Says, do you enjoy any UK created sci-fi fantasy shows or films? Um, people in the chat can remind me of some, and I might have watched some, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. I know there are I've watched a little Red Dwarf, but I haven't like watched a ton of it, so I can't really say that. Um, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. Oh no, actually no. There's some Hammer stuff from the '50s. Hammer did some sci-fi stuff, like the Quartermass Experiment. I like some of Hammer's sci-fi stuff from the '50s and '60s. Uh, and I mean, the big one is Doctor Who. But I've watched a little Doctor Who and I've enjoyed it, but I've never gotten like super into it. So I can't say that I'm like. I mean, I enjoy what I've seen of it, but I mean, I've never watched like a whole bunch of it. Um, Durata Trekkie says, would Clark Gregg, Phil Coulson, be a good Batman? And who should play Coulson when Mr. Gray can't do that anymore? No, I would not cast Clark Gregg as Batman. I don't think he's right for it. I don't think he's the right physical type, and I don't think I just don't think he's the right type overall. I would not cast him as Batman. But I love Clark Gregg and I love Coulson. He's one of my favorite characters in the MCU, and I loved Agents of Shield. Who should play Coulson when Mr. Gregg can't do it anymore? I don't. Does anybody have to? Can do we? I mean, and can we just not have Coulson be in it until we find the perfect actor to embody Coulson once again? I mean, I'm not in a hurry to recast it. Oh, Joe McClory says, as to my question, an example, truly universal suffrage, everyone, even in prison, and everyone who lives here, even people not fully nationalized yet, more democratic, but with a huge pushback. Oh, I would support that. I would, I mean, I definitely support full suffrage for prisoners and for people who live here but maybe aren't fully. I can see lowering the requirement to be able to vote down a notch or two from full citizenship. I think maybe certainly people who are long term residents here uh, and may not be full citizens but have have legal status and have lived here for a very long time. Um, who are I mean, who are citizens and everything but name only. I mean, I think surely they should be able to vote. I would support that. Um, Geraldo Trekkie says, people being difficult aside, who's the better Kirk? Shatner, Pine, Mignogna? And how do you pronounce one, the name Mignogna, and two, Captain Mackenzie Calhoun? Well, Vic Mignogna's last name is pronounced Mignogna, and Mackenzie Calhoun is pronounced Mackenzie Calhoun. And if you're asking for my opinion on Mackenzie Calhoun, I can't really tell you because the only New Frontier story I've ever read was one of the New Frontier comics. And I thought he was fine. I mean, he didn't really jump out at me as a character. I thought he was okay. And who is the best Kirk? Shatner is the best Kirk because Shatner uh, is the creator of the template. I think Chris Pine is a fantastic Kirk. I really, really hope that they make some more Kelvin timeline movies so I can see Pine as Kirk some more because I think he's great. But if you're asking me to choose only one between him and Shatner, I think I have to choose Shatner. Um, oh, who should play Mackenzie McCalhoun? I have no idea. Uh, Sarah Scott says, what do you think is the best superhero film and why is it The Incredibles? That is such a strange way of spelling Superman Returns that you have. Theincredibles. That's not how you spell Superman Returns at all. Um, Geralta Trekkie asks, you know what we need? Star Trek books about the adventures of the USS Titan written by Marina Sirtis, Jonathan Frakes, and some Peter David. What's your favorite Peter David book? Well, first of all, can Marina Sirtis or Jonathan Frakes write? I mean, no disrespect intended, but I mean, I know Frakes is a decent director, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be a good writer. I mean, Marina Sirtis is a wonderful actor. Doesn't necessarily mean she'd be a good writer. I don't know. Maybe she is, maybe she's not. I don't know, but I'd want to know that before I said, yeah, let him write some books. My favorite Peter David book is probably Imzadi. 255 AD says, what are the odds of some form of voter reform getting passed before 2023? I don't want to catastrophize, but the US could go in a very bad direction if that doesn't happen. I mean, the odds are good, but the problem with that is the thing that is keeping it from being more of a sure thing is that the Democrats need to fight for it. Like, they need to fight for it. And I don't know if the Democrats in Congress, and there are definitely Democrats in Congress who know this and who want to fight harder than they're fighting, but I don't know if there are enough of them to make a difference. That's the problem. So, and once again, I go back to what I often say, which is call your senators, call your Congress members, and tell them, fight for this. This is important. Dana says, if you met a cast member, you wouldn't just say hi. You'd have the option to ask a brief question or make an observation. And I'm certain you would think of something good. I'm just not interested in that kind of interaction. Like, if I was in some kind of a scenario where we were like working together on something, or like, we were both in the same place for a legitimate reason and we struck up a conversation, but yeah, just like getting to the end of the line and it's my turn and I have, 30 seconds with Patrick Stewart and I ask him a question and get it back. I'm like, again, no disrespect to anybody who has done that and thought it was awesome. That's great. I'm just not remotely interested in that. I just don't, that doesn't appeal to me at all. I mean, could I think of something to say? Yeah, I guess I could, but why would I want to? John Burns says, zombies are people too. Full voting rights for the dead. I mean, if they can verify their address, Tom Back says, do you see how being hardcore pro-feminist and anti-men's rights movement is ultimately damaging for the general population of the planet? No, not at all. Not even slightly. Do I see how being strongly in favor of an incredibly positive social change movement and completely against a toxic harassment hate movement is ultimately damaging for the population of the planet? No, I don't. Dana, seriously, not Into the Spider-Verse, you Philistine. Into the Spider. Look, we've talked about this privately, I know, and we may have even talked about it in one of our videos that we've done. I love Into the Spider-Verse. I think Into the Spider-Verse is a work of art, is a masterpiece. But Into the Spider-Verse is not even my favorite Spider-Man film. Like, I still think Spider-Man 2 is a better movie than Into the Spider-Verse. And I say that taking nothing away from Into the Spider-Verse. It's fantastic. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. I think Spider-Man 2 is better. So there you go. So I'm even more of a Philistine than people might have assumed I was. But yeah. Geralta Trekkie says, since you have the Nightwing cover, what do you think of the story of Dick Grayson turning into Rick Grayson after the headshot? I'm aware of that, but I have not read any of it. So, I mean, I can't really offer an opinion on it. It doesn't, like, just the idea of it doesn't really appeal to me. So, I mean, maybe if I would read it, I would think it was good, but just the description of, here's what happens. Dick gets shot in the head and after, he starts calling himself Rick Grayson instead of, just, oh God, like, you're making it way too complicated. You have a fundamentally good character. Just tell fucking stories with the character, like you're making it way too complicated. Some random geek says, if you are not interested in learning about anarchism, then how can I or any anarchists educate you on how to change the world and society? That sounds like your problem. I mean, yeah, that sound. I don't feel motivated. Like if I'm not, I have not found it to be a compelling philosophy. I'm sorry, and I mean, I know you can always say like, well, you don't know enough about it, but it doesn't like. Hopefully your plans are not completely predicated on convincing me to think that you're right. I mean, if you can't if you can't persuade me that anarchism is the way to go, then don't worry about it. Persuade other people. I mean, that just like how you're asking me how are you supposed to convince me? Like it's not my problem. um Oh, 255 AD. This is a great question. Do people ever claim to have seen ghosts on the battlefield near your house? You mentioned ghosts earlier, and it made me wonder about that. Yes, there are lots of people who claim that Antietam Battlefield is haunted. Yes. And it's not. I mean, like, no place is haunted. There's no such thing as ghosts. Hauntings don't exist. But yes, there are lots of people who claim that they have seen ghosts on the battlefield in Sharpsburg, in Hagerstown. At all, yes, there are many stories of ghosts and hauntings in this area. That people that grown up people seem to sincerely believe. I don't get it. Like, I believed in Santa Claus when I was a kid. I'm a grown up now. I don't believe in Santa Claus anymore. There are still adults who seem to sincerely believe in ghosts. I am hard pressed to imagine anything sillier than that. But yes, the answer to your question is yes. There are people who believe that the battlefield around here is haunted. I've been on the battlefield, by the way, in the middle of the night. You're not supposed to. Like, the battlefield is closed after dark. But when I was younger, I think Dana may even have been with me one time. I think Dana, maybe you've forgotten, but I'm pretty sure myself and a small group of friends, and I'm pretty sure Dana was among us at least one time. We snuck onto the battlefield after dark, and it was late. It was like after midnight maybe, and just kind of walked around. You have the whole place to yourself, and it's dark, and the moon's out, and you're like walking up to the statues and just kind of walking through, and never saw anything remotely like a ghost, like a haunting, nothing. Like, we may have seen a couple of animals that were out at night, but I mean, that's it. Like, and you know what? Anecdotal evidence, just because I was on the battlefield in the middle of the night a couple of times and never saw anything that looked like a ghost, that doesn't disprove it. That doesn't mean that there isn't such a thing. But I'm just saying, I mean, there are people who are like, oh, I bet you say you don't believe in ghosts, but I bet you wouldn't spend the night on the battlefield. Like, well, I mean, I haven't spent the entire night there, but I've been there at night and not felt the least bit afraid. So, I mean, there's that. But yeah. Geraldo Trekkie says, question, what was the creative reason for killing off Icheb? Was it to give Seven a Mother Bachmeyer moment in which she got revenge? Was it just that simple? Yes, absolutely. I think I referred to it in one of my videos as the fridging of Icheb. Yeah. And 255 AD asking Dana if she and I grew up together. We did not grow up together, but we have known each other for over 20 years. So this incident, this escapade on the battlefield would have been when we were in our very early 20s. Not when we were like kids, but when we were in our early 20s. But yeah, Dana and I, we didn't grow up together, but we've known each other for a very, very long time. Seth Jones says, I struggle with maintaining my composure when arguing points against those I strongly disagree with, i.e. anti-vax. Any pointers? You don't have to have those arguments. I mean, if having those arguments is upsetting to you, or if you feel that your inability to maintain your composure is actually hurting your ability to be persuasive, then you're not really accomplishing anything. And maybe you're better off just not having those arguments with people. Or if you want some way of helping to maintain your composure, it can help to try and distance yourself emotionally from what you're saying. I mean, I don't think I'm not, generally speaking, a proponent of emotionally distancing yourself from I feel like if you are arguing in favor of something or against something, if you're having like a really, really heated political argument, it should be something that you really care about. It should not be something that you're treating just as a thought experiment, or like a philosophical question that you're not assuming has any bearing on your life. Like I feel like being passionate is something that you should go for and is important. And it should not just, we should not be aiming for just dry intellectual debate. I think passionate, emotional debate is good. I think having a real investment in our side and in the things we are arguing for is important. But if you can't maintain your composure, maybe trying to establish some distance between what you're arguing for and yourself in your mind would help. I mean, so that you don't get caught up in it as easily. But of course, that's much easier said than done. I mean, I can say that. I can say, oh, just establish some distance. It's easier said than done. Steve Schmaling says, hey, Steve, do you ever have an actual back and forth discussion rather than just a Q&A? Yeah, I haven't done them for a few weeks. I'm taking an extended, possibly permanent break from those types of videos, but from November until about the middle of April, I did a whole series of videos where it was one-on-one interviews with me and someone else, and we had a conversation for an hour and a half. Called the conversation stream. And there were a bunch, I ended up doing, I think, over 20 of them, and I may do them again at some point, but I stopped doing them after 21 or 22 of them, because I just got burned out on it. I just got tired of, having to chase people to get people to be guests and having to prepare for it. And it just, I mean, the actual shows were super fun and I loved every single one of them. But the sort of legwork that went into doing it just got to be kind of draining, and I just decided to stop doing it. But yes, the answer is yes. I have done other than just Q&As like this. Yeah. By the way, I got a couple of super chats that I missed. One is from Keurig 2011. Thank you very much. Who says, hey, Steve, I watched one of your videos on Voyager's pilot and your comment on Janeway stranding them there. She also violated the Prime Directive. Agree? I guess, yeah, I think you could probably see it that way. She was interfering in the internal affairs of other societies. I mean, she said she stayed because she didn't want to abandon the Okampa to the Kazon, which morally speaking is a perfectly fine thing to want to do. But, I mean, if we're being a strict keeper of the Prime Directive, which Janeway was at other times throughout Voyager, where she would say, nope, we can't do that good thing because that would violate the Prime Directive. Well, yeah, intervening to help the Okampa, I think, is also a Prime Directive violation. And also another super chat from Stephen G. Klenar. Thank you very much, my friend. Says, to be fair, Teen Borg heartthrob, Icheb, was a terrible character, even worse than Chipotle. Not sorry to see him go. Chipotle. That's funny. Oh, and here's another one from Some Random Geek. Thank you, my friend, for the super chat. Says, hey, Steve, if you do your conversation stream again, have Garrett on to correct you on your mischaracterization of anarchism. I would if I do any more of them, I would definitely reach out to Garrett to be on an episode. And I mean, Garrett and I have done streams about stuff before. I think it's been a long time, but Garrett is a really good guy and really, really smart. And I mean, certainly knows a lot more about anarchist theory than I do, and knows a lot more about a lot of stuff. And he's a really, really sharp guy. He would be a great guest to have on, no matter what the subject was, if it was something that he knew something about and that I was interested in. So I would definitely reach out to Garrett to be a guest if I did more conversation streams. For sure, for sure. But thank you for suggesting that. Queer Pro Black says, question, think a series of TV shows that spawn a movie would be better than a movie spawning TV shows. Star Trek versus Star Wars. I mean, this is the coward's answer, but it does, I mean, it kind of depends because, I mean, I think there are examples of both of those working out and not working out. You know, there are Star Trek spawned movies after starting on TV. Some Star Trek movies are fantastic. Some Star Trek movies are terrible. Star Wars started out on the movies, has now spawned some TV shows. I am told that some of the animated Star Wars shows are great. I've never watched them and never really felt the least bit interested in watching them. But The Mandalorian has been pretty good. So, you know, that worked out too. I mean, I don't know if there's necessarily a reason to prefer one over the other. I mean, I think that just by the nature of the stories that have been told with them up to this point, I think Star Trek works better as a TV show and Star Wars works better as movies. But we've seen that both can work in the other format perfectly well, given the right circumstance. So, I mean, do I think it's better to have a hypothetical franchise start on TV and then go to movies, or start on movies and then go to TV? I don't think I can really answer that. I think it depends on the specifics, you know, but it's a good question. Steve Smaling says, thanks. I would love to be a part of that if you do that again sometime. Loved your 5 Stupid Things videos. He-Man was my favorite. The He-Man video was a lot of fun. The He-Man video was a lot of fun. And with the, I would love to do another video about He-Man. And now that the Netflix show is getting closer and closer, I think I don't think there's a release date for it yet, but it's coming out either later this year or next year. And so with that coming out and, you know, hopefully generating some more buzz around He-Man, I would love to do some more videos about He-Man at some point. Cause yeah. And my He-Man 5 Things video was really fun. I enjoyed writing it and doing it. And I still count that as one of my favorite videos in that series. 255 AD, fight for it or just do it. Can't they break filibuster anytime? Well, on paper they can, but Joe Manchin has said that he doesn't support it. Joe Manchin has said that he would not vote for a measure to end the filibuster. So, and the Democrats, for the Democrats to do it and to get rid of the filibuster, as of now, they would need every single Democrat to vote for it, plus Vice President Harris to vote for it as well. And so if Joe Manchin, who is a Democrat, if Joe Manchin does not vote for it, then they can't do it. So assuming that they get everybody on board, yes, they could do it at any time. But if Manchin doesn't vote for it, then they can't. And that sucks. That sucks. That so much of the Democratic agenda hinges on their ability to persuade a fucking coward of a moderate Democrat to go along with it. That sucks. But that is the situation. Yeah, Kirak 2011. I did a video on He-Man a long time ago. Look up, I think it's just called 5 Stupid Things About He-Man. But yeah, search for that on my channel and you should find it. It's a video I did a long ass time ago, but yes, I really had a good time with that one. Duralta Trekkie asks, have I ever seen a UFO? I mean, you have apparently never seen a ghost, but what about a UFO? No, I have never seen a UFO. I have seen things in the sky that momentarily looked like a UFO, momentarily looked unexplained, but they've always turned out to be something mundane, right? They've always turned out to be like an airplane or like a satellite or a light from like a radio tower that I was seeing out the window of my car as I was driving that was too far away at first to tell what it was. stuff. It's always turned out to be stuff like that. So no, I've never seen something that like I would say was an actual UFO. Um, Another super chat from John Burns who says, question to add, what kind of universe would Steve build if he was making the new sci-fi TV series? Be in depth to the next Trek Actually poll. It's a good suggestion, but I don't think I don't know if that would really fit with the Trek Actually series, but that's a good suggestion. Oh, CMAX says this is why someone, Schumer, needs to take him behind the shed, and I rarely advocate such things. I mean, I think it would be great if if the Democratic leadership would start applying more pressure to Manchin, say, hey, dude, like you're going to have to get with the program here. I think that would be wonderful. I don't know if they're going to do that or not. I think that would be wonderful. Tricky says, these days, the German DVD of the Snyder Cut of Justice League is being released. Should I buy it or should I rather have a buffalo doing things? As the Angry Video Game Nerd song says. I definitely don't think you should buy it. I'll put it that way. I definitely don't think you should buy it. 255 AD asks whether it's aliens or not. Do you think the UFO Pentagon stuff is going to turn out to have a non-mundane explanation? It depends on what we're calling mundane. I mean, do I think it could turn out to be some kind of super secret military vehicle that's capable of doing astonishing things? I mean, I guess maybe. I guess so. So it depends on whether or not you would call that a non-mundane explanation. I mean, I don't think it's going to turn out to be aliens or something supernatural, but could it be something, some kind of hitherto unknown technology that has been developed that we just didn't know about? I guess, sure. Yeah, I guess. Queer Pro Black says, what's your opinion on Google being exposed for funding far-right propaganda like Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, as well as Sky News in Australia? I mean, I'm not thrilled about it, but I can't I can't say I'm surprised. I think pretty much every large corporation, even ones like Google that supposedly have a don't be evil policy, have their hands dirty in some way or another. I think a lot of that is due to the fact that we have sold people for generations on the idea, the very sort of cutthroat capitalist idea that it's okay to act amorally as long as you're doing it to make money. And I think that's, Google supports far right platforms like that because they think there's a buck in it for them, because they think it would benefit them, because they think it would make them and their shareholders money. And that's why they do it. And it's sort of, it's the all's fair in love and money, and that's such a toxic, destructive principle to organize a major part of our society by, but that's what we have done. And I think it's something that we should be changing as quickly as possible. But no, so I mean, yeah, my opinion of it is that it sucks, but it doesn't surprise me, unfortunately. Seth Jones says, you're teleported to 1995 for a week. What do you do to enjoy your vacation? I go to the movie theater in the summer, assuming it's the right week. I go to a movie theater in that summer and I sit behind my 15-year-old self who is watching Batman Forever, and I lean forward and I say, if you think this one's bad, the next one's going to suck. And then I don't know. And I just go like eat ice cream. I don't know. It's Friends on yet? It's 1995. I think Friends is on. I watched an episode of Friends. Watch Monday Night Raw. If it's late enough in the year, I guess I could watch Monday Nitro, the first couple episodes of Nitro. I'm going to watch some classic 90s wrestling, something like that. That's it. I don't know. 1995. What was going on in 1995? Another super chat from John Burns, who says, saw a woman wearing a yellow hat with the word unvaccinated. You Americans and your mindset. Bill Burr was right. Absolutes drive American politics. Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutes do drive American politics. And we also have a very unfortunate tendency to dig in our heels and to make virtues of things that are not that are not virtuous. You know what I mean? That that are not that should not be made virtues of. You know what I mean? Um, so that's part of our national makeup, unfortunately. And also a super chat from Kirok 2011. Thank you again, my friend. Says, last Star Trek of the night, and believe me, I have tons of them. I know you don't like Voyager, but what do you think about episodes like Faces? You are going to have to remind me of Faces, Jetrel, the Thaw, and the Equinox. I'm sorry I went over my 150 limit. That's the whole question. Okay, well, thank you. Wow, thank you for making that a second super chat. I appreciate that. I don't remember Faces. You have to refresh my memory about what episode Faces was. But I think Jetrel was a pretty good episode. The Thaw is maybe my favorite episode of Voyager. I think the Thaw is a great episode, and I've mentioned that multiple times when people ask me what my favorite um, um, what my favorite Voyager episode is the Thaw. It's wonderful. And what was the other one? And Equinox. And the Equinox was a really, really great idea, was a really great concept. That I don't think was fully explored totally successfully as an episode, but it's a great idea and would have been better if if it was like many Voyager premises, would have been better if it was an episode in a better show. But yeah, I mean, some of those are really, really good episodes. Are really good episodes. Oh, Stephen Clenard asks, what classic 80s or 90s show would you like to see remade with hand puppets and paper dolls? I got to go with MacGyver. Hand puppet MacGyver would be mind blowing. You see how trying to can you imagine the fine puppetry involved in having him manipulate his Swiss Army knife with like one of those little hands on a stick? Come on, that'd be fantastic. Oh, okay. Faces. Thanks, Kirok. Faces is the one where B'Elanna gets split into half Klingon, half human. Yeah, that's a good one. From what I remember, that's a good one. 255 AD. I don't know if Manson will change his mind or not. Is democracy screwed if he doesn't? No, not necessarily. But it would be much better, much quicker if he would go along with the rest of his obviously correct colleagues. Yes. Yeah. And yes, yeah, Dana, I'm sorry for sorry for stealing your gimmick and forgetting things. Geraldo Trek, he says, do you think a reboot of the Golden Girls would work? I mean, potentially. Like rebooting the Golden Girls would not be the top of my list of things to do on TV, but I mean, with the right cast and the right take, I mean, I guess there's no reason why it couldn't necessarily work. I'm not someone who thinks we should keep rebooting old shows. I think just generally speaking, that's not a very creative direction for popular media to be going. I would rather see people putting their energy and their time and money into making new things instead of constantly remaking old things. But that being said, there's no reason why any particular remake or reboot can't be good, you know? Oh man, Super Marionation Magnum PI. Now there is a show. Now there is a show. I would totally watch. I would totally watch like Thunderbird style Magnum PI. Oh, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. Yes, Sir Random Geek, thank you very much. And you have correctly intuited that I am about to wrap up the show. We've been going for over 2 hours. So I'm going to wrap things up for the stream this time. So thanks to everybody for your questions. Thanks to everybody for, especially those of you who are channel members and Patreon patrons, for supporting the channel and for submitting your questions. Those of you who did. Thanks to everybody in the live chat who was asking questions and hanging out and interacting. This would not be possible without you. Please don't forget, as some random geek reminded me a moment ago, to check out the charity links that are linked in the description of the video. Those are links to fundraisers and PayPals and legal defense funds and things that to help out friends of ours who are in financial distress. Follow the link, go to the Google Doc. Consider helping out some of our friends and supporting some of those causes there, because they're all really, really deserving and needing of your support. So please do that. Don't forget. Also, don't forget, if you want to support my channel, you can become a member by clicking the join button and becoming a channel member at one of three levels. You can become a member at 99 cents a month, or $4.99 a month, or $9.99 a month. And any of those really, really helps me out and helps me to continue to do this and to make videos on this channel. Just click the join button. It's as easy as that. And you can also become a patron by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives and making a pledge of any amount from $1 on up to however much you can afford and you think I'm worth. Members at all levels and patrons of any level get to submit questions for Ask Away streams ahead of time, and their questions get answered in the first section of the live stream, just like you saw tonight. I answer patron and member questions first things first. So if you want to get your question in and guarantee that I'll answer it, become a member by clicking the join button, or become a patron by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives. And thanks to all of you who already have, and thanks to all of you who are going to in the future at some point. And thanks to all of you who gave me super chats tonight. I want to make sure that I single you folks out as well. I appreciate your generosity more than you can know. Thank you, Bruce, for saying that I'm the shit. I appreciate it. And also, don't forget that if you like what I do here on YouTube, you might also enjoy listening to the podcasts that I contribute to. They are podcasts on the Let Me Listen podcast family. You can hear them at letmelistenpodcasts.com. There are also links in the video description. I am on Late Seating, which is the movie review podcast that I co-host with Jason Harding, where we talk about movies and give them a fresh review and decide whether they deserve their reputation, be it good or bad. We just did our most recent episode was of Jason's birthday movie, which was the wonderful True Stories, written and directed by and starring David Byrne. A fantastic movie. And this weekend we are recording our next Late Seating episode, which is MASH. And that is our listener's choice episode. And that'll be up a week from tonight. And also, I am on the Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast that I co-host along with Jason, and also the lovely and talented Dana Cole, who is in the live chat right now. Dana and Jason and myself portray low-ranking officers serving aboard the Next Generation era Enterprise. We are in the 4th season of the Ensign's Log, and we have just jumped ahead to the Next Generation era. So our episodes take place concurrently with the events of currently the 1st season of TNG. And we're having so much fun doing the show. We just had our new episode go up today. You can listen to the new episode of the Ensign's Log at the link in the description, or by going to letmelistenpodcast.com. It's such a good episode. It's really funny. I listened to it earlier today, and I was so pleased with how it turned out. And I hope that if you listen to it, you will enjoy it as well. And also, if you want to support the Let Me Listen podcasts, they have their own Patreon, which is patreon.com/Lemmy_listen. You can support the Let Me Listen podcast. All of that money goes to Jason and goes to help him continue to produce the podcast, because he does all the work. And if you pledge $10 a month at Let Me Listen podcasts Patreon, not mine, but Let Me Listen, if you pledge $10 a month to the Let Me Listen Patreon, you can choose to record a guest appearance on an episode of the Ensign's Log. So if you are a big fan of the Ensign's Log and you have a spare $10 a month, you might consider spending it by joining the Let Me Listen Patreon, because the first one of our guest appearances is in this week's new episode, and it turned out really good. It's really funny and really well done. And again, all credit to that goes to Jason and to the patron who recorded that bit. It's really, really cool. So anyway, but to support me, go to patreon.com/Steve Shives. To listen to the podcasts, go to letmelistenpodcast.com. This Sunday will be my patron/member hangout, where Patreon patrons and also channel members will be able to join me for an on-air Zoom call for an hour, and only patrons and members can actually have a chance to join the call and be on the air with me, but everybody can watch. That'll be this Sunday starting at noon Eastern. As usual, it's usually the last Sunday of the month at noon Eastern. I'm looking forward to that. And let me see. Next Wednesday, we'll be back, Dana and I, to watch another episode of Deep Space Nine on Trek Reluctantly. We'll be watching the Deep Space Nine episode, If Wishes Were Horses. And then next Friday, I believe, Dana, we're still on schedule for the next Read Away. But we'll confirm that for sure on Wednesday, I think. But right now, we're currently scheduled to do the chapter 3 of The Other West More on Read Away a week from tonight, next Friday. So there we go. I think that's everything. And on Monday, I think I have another Ask a Professional YouTuber video coming out on Dana confirms I am right. Read Away next Friday. And on Wednesday, I will also have another pre-recorded video coming out. I'm not sure what it will be yet. It might be the video I referenced earlier about the A&E wrestling biographies, but it might be something else. I'm not sure. I haven't decided. But anyway, that's all next week. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Please, everybody, have a great rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend. Those of you who are my fellow Americans who are gearing up for the Memorial Day weekend, have a good Memorial Day and a good Memorial Day weekend. Please be safe. Please be sensible. Don't forget, there is still a pandemic. So if you are not vaccinated or you just want to be extra cautious, please continue wearing a mask and social distancing and doing all of that. We're not completely out of the woods with this thing yet. So have a good time. Have a good weekend. But be safe, please, and take care of yourselves. And I will see you all later. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care.